Welcome. God bless you. So good to be with you. And once again, I hope you're all doing well. And I just want to remind you that every Friday now, Joyce and I will be praying for you and for our listeners, subscribers. And the prayer I told you would be based out of what Paul prayed for the church at Philippi. Philippians 1 verses 9, 10, and 11. This was the prayer he prayed, the one we're praying for you on Fridays. He says, "And this I pray, that your love would abound yet more and more unto knowledge and judgment." And not just knowledge. We don't want to just fill our heads with knowledge, but judgment, making decisions based upon that knowledge. It's like raising your kids. You teach your kids right from wrong, and they know that, but you want them to choose the right. It's the same thing with us, to make choices. We don't need to know what to do. We know what to do. We need to do what we know. Those kinds of things. That's part of the prayer. This I pray, that your love would abound more and more in the knowledge and all judgment, that you may approve things that are excellent, that you may be sincere without offense until the day of Jesus Christ, being filled with the fruits of righteousness which are by Jesus Christ, unto the glory and praise of God. What a powerful prayer. He said that's what he prayed for him. Epaphras had certain things he prayed for the church at Colossae, that they would stand perfect and complete in all the will of God. Pray biblical prayers. They're powerful. At the end of this year, Lord willing, you will have received 52 prayers from Joyce and I. I don't know why we didn't think of this earlier and pray for the people that were listening. But that's what part of our goal and what we're going to be doing this year. And we do thank God for you. Well, this is our third message in our January series on numbers. Some numbers, we would do well to know some things about those numbers in scriptures, like the significance of one. One day he's coming. Matthew 24:35, heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of God, angels of heaven, but my Father only, because he hath appointed a day in which he will judge the world in righteousness by that man whom he hath appointed. The significance of one. The noteworthy number 2. No man can serve two masters. Without two, there's no choice. In the garden, there was a tree called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. No number 2, no choice. The title of this message is When Things Come in Threes. Now your mind may be going, oh yeah, when two things happen, watch out for that third one or something. Well, just some thoughts on the number 3 to get us going. Adam and Eve had 3 sons, Cain, Abel, and Seth. Noah had 3 sons, with which worked with him, building the ark and were on the ark, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Balaam, in Numbers chapter 22, children of Israel, Exodus. They are now in their years of wandering, heading up, and they're approaching the land of Moab. And the news of them has went before them, and the people of Moab are terrored. So Balak, who was the king of Moab, sent for a prophet. He had a prophet that had a nominal respect for God, and in some mysterious way had some relationship with God. And the princes of Moab tried to hire Balaam to curse Israel, to put a curse on them, to keep them from coming into our land. And they offered him the moon for it. And he said, well, I'll tell you, I won't say anything but what God has told me. But what made him come to that decision was, he decided, I'm going. He said, I'm going to do that. Greed. The lure of money and wealth overcame him. So he takes off and he's going to go up to the princes of Moab to say, yeah, I'll curse Israel if I can. And God warned him. He's riding his donkey that he had from a colt. I mean, this was his favorite donkey. He's riding him. And the donkey sees the angel of the Lord up in the path, and it runs out into the field. And Balaam goes, what? And he gets him back on, takes his thing, gets him back on the trail. And a little further up the trail, there's a narrow place with a rock wall on one side. And the donkey sees the angel of the Lord. It terrifies him, and he pushes into the wall and crushes Balaam's foot, hurts it. And Balaam gets pretty upset with him. Now, this is a second warning. And then finally, up the trail a little further, the donkey sees, has more spiritual insight than the prophet does, sees the angel of the Lord, sword drawn, and he paralyzes him, he just collapses underneath him, just falls down. And Balaam loses it. He takes his stick and begins to beat that and said, if I had a sword, I would kill you. And if you're familiar with this account, the donkey talks to him and says, have I ever acted like this before? And he says, well, no, you haven't. He's so angry, he's out of his mind. He's talking with his donkey, doesn't realize what's going on. And the angel of the Lord appears to Balaam, and he sees him with his sword drawn. He says, if your donkey had not have heeded the warnings these 3 times, he said, I would have killed you and let your donkey go free. Now, Balaam is terrified and says to the angel of the Lord, well, you want me to go back? Yeah, right. He doesn't get the messages and the warning. People, when we receive 3 warnings about don't do something that we're intent on doing, and especially if you know it's something against God, when things come in 3s, pay significant attention to them. Job had 3 friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. They became miserable comforters to him. Daniel had 3 friends that were genuine friends. They would go in the fire for him. Their relationship with him and with their God. They wouldn't bow the knee. I was at a conference years ago. Warren Wiersbe was one of the speakers. And he said from the pulpit, he said, if a man has 5 friends in his lifetime, he's a rich man. And I thought at that moment, what a strange statement. I said, I've got 5 friends. And then he described what kind of friends he was talking about. Not the kind that are with you when you're always right, you know, but they're with you when you're wrong, when you're up, when you're down, when you're healthy, when you're sick, when you're rich, when you're poor. And all of a sudden my circle began to shrink. I didn't know if I had any friends like that. And I wondered if I were that caliber of friend. Daniel had 3 friends. I think that's true. By the way, Joyce and I have prayed, and God has been good to us to give us some friends, godly friends. Well, Ecclesiastes 4:12 says, a threefold cord is not easily broken. A man and a woman, marriage, oh, the importance of having God in your marriage. That strengthens that marriage. A threefold cord is not easily broken. David, near the end of his life, he is a veteran, seasoned saint of God, man of God. But he, for some reason, falls prey to Satan's temptation to number Israel like his strength was in his men. He knew better than this. Even Joab, his general, said, David, what are you doing? You know better than this. He said, I'm the king, you number him. All the other kings and kingdoms knew the number because their strength was in their army. David knew that his strength was in his general, who was the Lord. He knew better than this. So when the prophet came to him and said, you've sinned, and God's going to give you 3 choices. You can have 3 years of famine, you can have 3 months of war, or you can have 3 days of pestilence. And David said, I'll take the 3 days of pestilence and plead for God's mercy, because I know he is merciful. 75,000 people died because of his sin. He gave him 3 choices, and all of them had to do with 3s. When things come in 3s, Elijah, Mount Carmel, we talked about him in the 2s, how long halt you between 2 opinions. Well, when the prophets of Baal failed at their trying to call down fire from heaven, he said, now it's my turn. And he took 12 stones and he built an altar and he dug a ditch around the altar. He laid the wood on the altar, put the sacrifice on the altar, and he said, now get me 4 barrels of water and pour it all over. So they poured the barrels of water all over the offering. He said, do it again. They did it the second time. And then he said, do it again. And they did it 3 times. 3 times 4 is 12. 12 tribes of Israel. They covered. They soaked it. Oh, you need a flamethrower to light that offering. He made a simple prayer to God, and the flame and fire came from God and consumed the offering, consumed the altar, and licked up every drop of water in the trench around the altar. 3. Jonah his body was 3 days in the belly of the great fish. Jesus' body was 3 days in the tomb. When the Apostle Paul, on his way to Damascus, saw the light from heaven above, the brightness of the sun, it literally cauterized his eyes. And he was blind for 3 days. Then God told Ananias, go and lay hands on him and pray for him that he might receive his sight. Why 3? Why 4? When things come in 3s, there's significance to this. In 2 Corinthians chapter 12 and verse 8, Paul has a thorn in the flesh, and he says, I besought the Lord thrice, my old King James says, 3 times. Please. We don't know what that thorn was. But he pled with him, Lord, take away this thorn in my flesh. 3 times. After 3 times, God said to him, my grace is sufficient for you. And it's like lights came on for the Apostle Paul. Most gladly then will I, and if you read the rest of that, endure affliction with joy. He took a whole different attitude. Sometimes we don't get it on the first time or even on the second time. But by the 3rd time, we should start getting it. And when things come in 3s. Well, I'll close with this thought. In 1 Corinthians 13:13 says this, and now abides faith, hope, and love. These 3. Every sermon you've ever heard in your life has something to do with those 3 commodities. Faith, hope, and love. Well, when things come in 3s, the significance of 1, the noteworthy number 2 choice. When things come in 3s. Next week, I'm going to talk to you about the most used number in the Bible. Now, some of you will Google that and find out what it is right away. Many of you already know. But it's the most used number in the Bible. And then our last Sunday, our last message in January on Numbers, we'll do with my favorite number. And until then, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance. This is the countenance. It's an outward expression of an inward condition. What he is saying, the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Oh Lord, smile upon me. I'd rather have a smile from God on my life than anything else. May his smile be upon you. God bless you.